I'm sure there's an easy way of doing it without what I want to be able to do is have a variable, stop, whatever.
Hey everybody. So welcome to BrisJS. There we go. Welcome to BrisJS. So my name's Ash. I'm running this evening. Kev is off getting married, and so yeah. Therefore, if you've got anything BrisJS related, I'm the man. Come and get in touch. So tonight, just some quick housekeeping. RSVPs on Meetup. You probably use Meetup to get here if you haven't. Work, but check out the Meetup app if your RSVP changes. We just want to make sure that you go in there and update that. That just means we can get the pizza, beer, seating, all that kind of stuff, so it's running smoothly. So yeah, if you change your mind or whatever, do that. Venue facilities, we've got bathrooms just outside and by the elevators. We've got water in the jugs at the back, which you're welcome to help yourself to throughout the night. We've also got pizza and beer, so the intermission should be, I'm guessing, about 7:30 at this rate. We've also got a call for presenters, so we're really interested in seeing your faces. Really want to get you folks up here and talking. So if you've got something you're interested in talking about, or you're hearing about, you don't have to be a professional speaker to get up here and say something. I find that it's often one of the best ways to learn about a subject, to really, get in and learn something, is to give a talk on it, because then you've got to know what you're talking about. So if you're interested, if you've never spoken, or if you want to speak, definitely come and say hi to me, and we can organize something. The alternative is we have the GitHub issues page where we sort of organize all of the BrisJS stuff. So you can jump on there, GitHub BrisJS meetups issues, and you can create issues for if you want to suggest a talk, if you want to present a talk, if you've got a job you want to put up there, or finding a job, you can jump on there. I wanted to run through some upcoming events as well. So if you folks are interested, we've got the Social JS, which is just our pub meet essentially. So once a month, usually about mid-month, we get together somewhere. This time around, we haven't organised it yet, but it'll be in the city. So last month we had a fairly casual event at the Fox in South Brisbane. A few folks rocked up. They had $4 pizzas. There were billiards, I think. Adrian played Gallagher as well, which was kind of exciting. So that's the kind of mood we've got. You don't have to drink. You can. It's optional. So check that out. It'll be on the meetup page for BrisJS. We've also got Node Knockout in, I think, November. The registrations are open. So if you're interested in, I guess, competing, it's a 48-hour hackathon. The Pose, was it the Pose? We actually won a whole bunch of stuff for several years. It's worth it, get in there. Some other meetups that we've got, Brisbane Tech Movies is on the 13th. They're doing a sort of hackathon for people. So if you're new to JavaScript, or if you know someone who wants to get into JavaScript, check that out. I put the Brisbane Web Accessibility meetup as well. Now this is actually just starting up again after like a 2-year hiatus. So these folks are going to teach you how to make your apps and websites accessible to folks with disabilities, which you might not think is important, but actually there's a few little things you can do to make life so much easier for these folks. So I'm going along with that one. I recommend you do too. Should be good. And shout out for the Brisbane Jelly every Friday if you work from home. Rock up, they go to the edge, I think. Sit around, work, talk, that sort of thing. So tonight on the agenda, we don't have a Corey Nunn yet.
He's 2 minutes away.
He's 2 minutes away, so I'll keep talking. No one will
take up that from his tongue.
So Corey, Corey and Colin, are going to stand up and tell us a little bit about Kev and Gio, their wedding, which will be fun. It'll be great. Yeah, true. So then we've got Developer Steve, we've got Jonathan Lewis, Tom McCarthy, a panel discussion on why your legal department hates React. So if you're not familiar with that controversy, you're about to be. And during that, if you want to tweet us questions, we've also, hopefully, if it's working, got a YouTube live stream, so you can pop questions onto that for anyone playing at home, if you can see this. And yeah, we'll have the panel answer those ones. Then we'll have intermission about 7:20, 7:30. Then we'll have Kim Burgess talking Node and .NET interoperability, so Microsoft and Node running together forever. Should be exciting. And then we've got some lightning talks at the end. So we've got...
you just already said everything.
Yeah, I've just said everything that Nathan was going to, so he won't. But we've got Josh, Glenn, and possibly some other folks if you've got... Oh, there we go. So if you have anything interesting that you've been doing or you want to jump up and just show off your work, now's an opportunity for that. So that should be good. Also, our sponsors, Auto in General, Console Connect, and Just Digital People. So if you're after insurance, networking, or a job, definitely get in touch with these folks. They're good for it. So Auto in General, obviously sponsoring the venue. Here comes Corey. Welcome. Hey. Yeah, Auto in General have been generous enough to give us this venue for the past quite a while now. Console Connect is sponsoring the pizza, and Just Digital People are sponsoring the beer, so they're good people. Actually, I also wanted to mention, so our website, BrisJS.org, is now hosted on Netlify. So these folks are a startup. They deal with, basically, you push your code to GitHub. They deal with building it, deploying it, hosting it. They've got stuff like A/B testing, DNS hosting, the whole shebang. So if you're looking for web hosting, I really love these folks. Also, they sent me a whole bunch of stickers, so if you're interested in stickers, like I am, I'll pop them, I guess, up the front somewhere, so you can come and grab some of those during intermission. So jumping right into it, Kev and Gio's wedding. I'm going to have Corey and Colin jump up here. We've got some photos.
Greetings, everybody.
Fancy liquor, right? It's like the
So everybody obviously knows Kevin, yeah? Pretty much. That's Kevin. He got married. It was awesome. Look, there's Kevin. He was about to get married. That's Colin, looking like a security guard. That was also fucking awesome. Look at that. That's them just after getting married. I didn't get those while they're getting married because that would be really hard. Since I was up there, but that's not the point. There's me driving a go-kart, drinking beer. There's Kevin and his wife, just after being married. Look, it's just everybody doing the marriage thing, and it was fucking awesome. Everybody should give Kevin a round of applause, even though he's not here, but he'll sit on the video.
I did not know the speech.
Like, yeah, but you, no,
All right,
you,
for right now, no, I didn't.
No.
I had one on the night. I was best man.
And you gave him massive D20s. That was
Oh yeah,
awesome.
yeah, because we're all being deers and.
Yeah, and I got nothing because I was fucking slack apparently. Cool,
Yeah.
that's pretty much it.
Yeah, we just want to show you some photographs, even though that one in the top left, I don't know when that was taken.
That was a little while ago, I think.
That was after the speech after I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I could start drinking.
You were done then.
Could be a brainer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it. I just thought it'd be kind of cool because you know our BrisJS leader guy did the thing and it was important and it was sweet. Cool. That's it.
Yeah, he said it. Good story, well told.
That's very exciting. Congratulations, Kev. You did good. So next we'll hand over to the panel. Again, if you've got questions throughout this, tweet at BrisJS, jump on the YouTube live stream, or stick your hand up and someone will run out and get that. One last thing.
Yay!
Yay, we're good. Hello, everyone. That got everyone's attention. Happy Monday. How good is it? Monday, pre-week meetup. How good's that? That is awesome. Big round of applause for Ash for kicking things off. Now I thought I'd all start doing, so for those that know me, I'm at Developer Steve on Twitters and Weibo and like everywhere. I'm kind of got a bit of a reputation for doing puns, and tonight, like, I've been tied at a desk for like ages. I've got a whole bunch of new ones, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to test out two, including a JavaScript specific one. Yeah, pressure's on now, right? So, we're going to go to a blank screen for the first one. What did one node server say to the other node server? Haha, socket to them! I love this one because it's funny because it's true. That was the first time I've done it. Everyone, it worked well. I'm a developer Steve, so I've covered events like all over the place. I've been around the world now like 11 times or something stupid. This is using a site called Jet It Up, using my Tripit log. So I've been recording my Tripit log since like 2014, and like I'm 120% of the way to the moon. So I'm on my way back. Woohoo! But I'm so basically my day-to-day, I'm the CTO for a startup called Snip in Brisbane City at the moment. Announcement pending. Heading back to evangelism soon. So I get to do it all again, and I'll be able to come and do all meetups and conferences and things all with you soon. So look out, there's more puns coming. I thought I'd start off on some bad news on the back of that, just because we're all like web people. I don't know if anyone's seen the news lately, but the internet's broken. Dun dun dun. It was funny, I was playing Xbox like Wednesday night last week, and the speed was like way worse than normal. I'm like, what the? And it just did not get better. And then that came out. So basically 2 typhoons and some sharks have destroyed our internet. So yeah, anyway, heads up. This is why minifying JS is like so important, right? I tell you the one about the minified JavaScript, but it's a little scripted. That's actually one of my favorites. Anyway, the panel! So tonight, I thought it'd be a good opportunity. Ash was looking for some speakers. Everyone should get up here and do a talk at some point. Who hasn't done a talk yet? Everyone should do it. Anyway, I'm doing a plug. Yeah, look, if you want to come do a talk, I'm more than happy to help where I can. If you need help with slides and animations and puns, I have quite a few more you haven't heard yet. Just saying. Yeah, more than happy to lend a hand, and yeah, as Ash said, it's super important to come up and do a talk and just give it a go. It's fun. So anyway, back to the panel. The issue that this has come out of recently, and I'm sure many of you have seen it because it's kind of been all through the internet. It all amounts to some terminology the likes of Facebook has included in their licensing for open source scripts, basically. So React.js is the topic of the discussion tonight. And in particular, I won't let you read all the fine print because I'm not that big. But in particular, that bit there, yay, means. That bit there, which basically says, even I can't read it. Indirectly, or take direct financial interest in any patent assertion, one, against Facebook or any of its subsidiaries or corporate affiliates. Basically, you do something nasty against Facebook, and they've got the right to, if you're using React, they've got the right to come in and, like, yeah, do some really nasty things too. Which kind of started to spur the discussion, like, what does this mean? This is in code terms, because as a developer, like, I can use any of the tools I have at my disposal to be able to build amazing things, but then the law comes in and says something completely different. So, we're joined tonight with some really, really cool speakers on our panel. First up, we have Tom McCarthy, also known on Twitter as I am Tom MCC.
That was a mistake.
No, it was intentional. It was a feature. So Tom is a front-end dev and product management at Rex Software. Like React, don't like sand. Yeah, sandboxes though, right? Yeah. Former esports marketing grunt for Evil Geniuses and others. Can you please welcome Tom to the stage? Next up we have Jonathan. Really lucky to have our speakers tonight, but particularly Jonathan, who's an IP lawyer. Yes, please don't go through technical. No, he'll be fine. Jonathan is a patent and trademark attorney and has extensive IP rights experience, including patents, trademarks, and designs, including minerals processing, extractive metallurgy. Yeah, I was practicing that one. Anyway, we'll edit it, it's fine. Industrial processes, medical devices, mechanical devices, and packaging technology. Woo! Can you please welcome Jonathan to the stage? First question. Now, if you all have, oh yeah, I need to put that on the screen. Oops. Now, if you all have questions, we've got some questions we're going to start off with, but if you all have questions, we can, yeah, please put your hand up, or tweet us on social media, so at BrisJS, and Ash is feverishly watching them right this second. He's so busy, he's like, there's so many coming out. Absolutely. All right, so, I'm going to put that one on a candid over so it doesn't squeal. Because everyone's awake. Woo! Everyone's awake, right? Oh no. Alright, so first question. Damn it, I should have had one picked out first. Alright, let's start at the top. Do you think that international and local patent laws need to be scrapped? Start off with that big one, though. Up to you.
I've probably got a bit of a vested interest in saying no to that, given that that's my job. So, but realistically, I think the answer still is no. I mean, the patent system is open to abuse. There's no doubt about that. But on the whole, patents are there to promote innovation, and the idea is that the idea of a patent is that basically you will receive a monopoly for a limited period of time, and in return you fully disclose your invention to the patent office or the government. And the idea is at the end of your period of monopoly, any person will be able to exploit that invention. The period of monopoly is typically 20 years, so it doesn't last forever. And the important thing there is that there are companies, and I think pharmaceutical companies are probably the best example of that have to invest billions of dollars into the development of a particular drug, for instance. They have to run through fairly strenuous clinical trials to get their government approval. And at the end of the day, if they can't then have that to get their money back on the money they put into that development, by and large, they simply won't put that money in. And so you're looking at things like vaccines, you're looking at medicines, things along those lines that just won't be developed if there's not the ability to recoup some of those development costs. I think the other issue there as well is that if you look at the relative size of innovators, if you're looking at a small company, a startup that's producing an invention that's trying to get that into a market, whether that be Australia, whether that be in the US, if there's no patent, if they're not able to protect that invention, then there's absolutely nothing to stop a big multinational from taking that invention from them, doing what they want with it. So I think you're looking at not only protection for large companies that have sort of invested a lot of money into their development, but you're also looking at protection for smaller businesses that want to try and break into that market and compete with some of the bigger companies.
Yeah, I mean, I generally agree. No, that's right. Well, I think it's easy to, especially if you come from a company where patents and patent law doesn't really affect you much in the day-to-day, it's easy to see sort of situations like this. And it's probably, for many devs, it's like one of the few situations where they even have to think or worry about patent law, depending on the size of the company or the context of work they've done in the past. And I think, the amount of benefits that obviously patents provide for, I think just because these isolated scenarios can occasionally arise where they may seem like more of a hindrance than a help for the sort of mean population, I think it's fairly drastic to suggest that we just scrap them entirely. So yeah, I think that's pretty similar.
I guess the React instance recently is just one instance of, I don't want to single Facebook out because they do good work, but there's other instances where there's certain patents or restrictions which has stopped innovation. Do you think that's a hindrance for the business and, innovation in general?
I mean, you'd have to weigh up whether or not those sort of isolated scenarios outweigh the mean benefit that patents and patent law provides. Because for so many businesses, they do protect the ideas that companies spend so much to invest in. So, I mean, I'm not sure whether where the balance is. Probably in positive. I'd probably, you know, like you said, I think it is of immense value for so many businesses. There are isolated situations, I think, particularly I think in modern years, you know, where software patents can potentially stifle innovation. Sure, worst case scenario, but as a net result, I don't think that's probably an effect.
I tend to agree, and I think there are certain industries that perhaps lend themselves a little bit to that, that sort of situation where you do perhaps stifle innovation. I think one of those, you know, IT, telecommunications is one. You know, your smartphone has something like, each smartphone has something like 1,500 patents associated with a single smartphone. So, you know, I guess it's not an abuse, but it's certainly smart practice by these bigger companies that have the ability and the resources to build these sort of walls of patents around their products, is that suddenly you get a single item that has so many patents built around it that it's very hard to innovate in that sense. But I think on the whole, like Tom said, I think they're fairly isolated cases. I think on the whole, the patent system works the way it's intended to. It is unfortunate you do end up with situations where, whether through sharp business practice or whether through things like non-practicing entities, you might have patent trolls in the US, you get that sort of situation that crops up. And that's an unfortunate byproduct of the system as well. But I still think that that's the minority of cases.
And I guess just on that, with the mass user adoption around some of the patent stuff, like how, is there a point where a patent becomes invalidated because there is that mass user adoption? And I guess the argument against that is the likes of Wi-Fi, which the CSIRO won that case last year, but like huge payouts. Again, I know it does protect, you know, their vested interest. They spent all that money developing that protocol and distributing it, etc. But is there a point where the patent becomes, almost through mass user adoption, becomes open source?
Not really, unfortunately. A large user uptake of a patent intervention is what we would call a secondary indication that the invention is actually a patentable one. Where people are using the invention in preference to technologies that existed before, that is an indication that the patent or the invention is probably very much patent eligible and very much patentable. So from that point of view, you're unfortunately stuck with that being under a patent or the owner of patentee having a monopoly for the period of that patent. There are ways around that. You know, a patentee can strictly enforce their patent. They can be the only ones to use it, or they can potentially license it to people. You know, patents are like a piece of property, like a house or a car. You can sell them, you can license them. So just because a piece of technology might be under a patent doesn't mean that it's necessarily you know, completely cut off to other people to use. There are potentially ways around that.
Sorry,
yeah.
We have audience questions. Plus I have a few more. I think we upset them. Anyway, they're listening. Can you give examples of software patents that are worthwhile as vaccines, etc., or Wi-Fi?
The iOS bouncy scroll innovation.
Rounded icons?
Yeah. Oh God, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head. I can come. A couple of my colleagues are here tonight as well, so I'm going to look at them occasionally. So if there's something I'm going to struggle with, I'm going to throw to them. Can you guys think of anything in particular that's...
Useful software patents. What about things in the field of IT security or something like that? So, you know, devices which may sort of enable encryption in a particular manner, or facility, or you know, something which, let's say in the field of say quantum computing or something like that. These are all sort of IT-related inventions which could drastically change the way society works and the public good. And should that innovation be rewarded? I would say yes. But again, vested interest.
We've got a few coming in. Question for the panelists. Should the period of monopoly be shorter for tech-related patents given how rapidly tech is superseded? Yes.
That's a very good question. In Australia, there is actually a secondary tier of patent protection. It's called an innovation patent. That lasts for 8 years as compared to the normal 20 years for what we call standard patent application. So innovation patents are particularly good for things, as you say, in a rapidly evolving technology where in 8 years' time the invention is going to be obsolete anyway. So innovation patents are particularly good for that sort of invention. Having said that, the Australian government has, within the last week, taken on a recommendation from the Productivity Commission, and innovation patents are eventually going to be phased out. We don't know the exact timeline for that, but it will be over sort of the next few years. So they've been around for probably about 15 years now, but their time is unfortunately running out. There's also not a huge number of countries that have that sort of similar second-tier protection regime. China has something called a utility model, which is similar, but they're purely to protect an apparatus, so a physical device rather than a method or something on those lines, which is probably more what a software-related invention is going to be. So, yeah, look, I do agree. I think an 8-year term, for instance, the innovation patent is a fantastic thing for technology that's moving quickly. It's just unfortunate it's not going to be available for too long. I guess, again, having said that, if you do get a standard patent, it can last for up to 20 years from its date of filing, but the patent offices around the world will charge you fees to keep those patents in force. In Australia, they're annual fees starting from the 4th year. If you don't want that patent anymore, you stop paying the fees, and the patent office will tell you that it's dead. So, if you get to a point where that patent isn't making money for you anymore, and that's, to be honest, brutally honest, that's the point of the patent, is to make some money for you. If that patent's not making money for you, you let it die.
That was an awesome question from Anna Gerber. Next up we have, are all patents 20 years, or does it depend on the industry / invention? Yeah, I was actually thinking as well. By
and large, they're 20 years. That's fairly much harmonised around the world at this stage. There are some exceptions. So pharmaceuticals, I was talking about earlier, pharmaceuticals you can get in certain countries up to a 5-year extension of the term. The purpose of that is that often regulatory approval takes so long to get that an extra period of monopoly is given to try and sort of make up for that time, but generally 20 years.
I've got one for you. And that was another awesome question from Anna. Sorry, not Anna. That was from Kira McDonald at Kira McDonald on Twitter, and we also have some others from Nathan Hu. What are your thoughts on big companies like Microsoft heavily backing React? Should they fear the clause too? This is basically in response to that whole Facebook we know where you are.
Yeah. This is an interesting segue, I think, into the actual React issue, because it's a commonly cited argument that, like, well, if Microsoft doesn't have to worry about it, then you probably don't have to. One of my friends pointed out that there could be a lot of like mutually assured destruction going on, like they've huge, vast libraries of patents that, if one tries to kick up a stink, it could just be this thermonuclear war. I don't know how likely that is. Sounds pretty unlikely to me, but I think in general it does indicate that a lot of companies like Microsoft, Uber, Apple, all these companies who all possessing of Yahoo in particular, I know that this is a ton of patents. All these companies do adopt React and use them in quite a wide array of apps. So if these companies use it, it does tend to indicate, I think, that perhaps this patent clause may be a bit of a paper tiger. I think it does at the very least indicate that big companies do have an avenue of using React. I know the original patent clause that came with React circa 2015, Google was particularly unsatisfied with it, and very early on in React's lifespan, Google was not happy to use it. It was only after consultation between Facebook and Google's lawyers that they released a revised edition of the patents clause that Google has since been happy with, and that's the clause that we're left with today. I think it's generally a good sign. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's because if you look at it from the point of view of the patentee, they've put time and effort into the development of the invention. They have patent rights. They have the ability to enforce those patent rights in any particular way they want to. I don't agree necessarily that that's the way they should have gone about it. In fact, I don't agree that that's the way they should have gone about it, because I think that what they're doing is basically trying to do something which is not true open source software. So I think from that point of view, I think they've probably overreached a little bit. The problem is, I guess as you sort of touched on there, that once other companies see this, if it's successful, then you go down the path where there might be other companies that try this too. I think that's probably the issue, is it may be getting away from what should be true sort of open source technology into a situation where companies, they have the legal right to do so, but it's not in the spirit of open source.
It actually makes me think of the Samsung versus Apple wars years gone by, where Google kind of stepped in with a group and sort of went, we should stop this.
Yeah.
A few more questions. We've got Kieran McDonald again. What are the costs around involving getting a patent?
So getting a patent, it depends on where you want to get a patent, to be honest. So patents are granted on a country-by-country basis. There's only a few regional patent offices, and one of those is Europe, so you can file a European application will cover 35 odd countries. But on the whole, if you want protection in a particular country, you've got to file in that country. So if you're looking at patent protection in Australia, for instance, from filing through to the expiry of that patent in 20 years, assuming you pay all the intervening renewal fees and that sort of thing, you're probably looking at around about sort of 20 grand or up, something along those lines. The bulk of those costs are going to be in the first sort of 5 years or so. Once you start looking overseas, costs do start to creep up, particularly in countries where things need to be translated. So if you're filing in China, if you're filing in Japan, if you're filing in Korea, for instance, absolutely everything you file will need to be translated into those local languages. So you start to look at fairly significant costs. Normally, I guess, Australia maybe 20 grand, maybe New Zealand would be something similar. If you're looking at places like the US, you could be looking across the life of a patent and looking at sort of $50,000, something in those lines.
But that's not the cost to get a patent, that's the cost across the line.
That's exactly right, that's the cost across the line for it.
And the cost to defend it? No, I mean, bottomless pit. So from Time on Twitter, are there any instances of a patent being downright ignored in a certain jurisdiction? Patent abuse, options for devs / companies. I guess this kind of comes down to the whole mutual agreement stuff we talked about earlier.
Well, I guess, in terms of ignoring a patent, it comes down to the will of the patentee to actually enforce that patent. So, if there is an infringement of a patent, if the patentee decides for whatever reason, whether it's not worth their while, whether it's too expensive, what have you, if they don't enforce that, then I guess to an extent that's ignoring the infringement of that patent. There's always a risk in doing that. I mean, anybody could infringe a patent. We could all go out and do something that infringes the patent tomorrow, but you are taking a risk that the patentee won't come after you. So that's the issue there, I think. There are also some countries that are relatively anti-patent in terms of their outlook. So India is one example of that. At the moment, there are quite a number of pharmaceutical patents, Indian pharmaceutical patents, which have been granted compulsory licenses. So Indian drug companies have been granted a compulsory license to make a drug that's under patent. The idea being that they want to produce cheaper drugs for the Indian market. So that the government has granted compulsory licenses. So from that point of view, it can be on a governmental level. It's not really ignoring it, but that compulsory licensing is effectively negating the patentee's rights in some ways.
Very nice Tom because the next two are like legally. Anyway, what are your thoughts about forking patent libraries into true open source libraries, and what are the risks associated? So this is basically the React Preact.
Yeah, so I think the first thing with that is that it wholly depends on if you know for a fact that there is a solid patent behind the library you're forking. And that's an interesting topic, because to the extent of my knowledge, I don't think anyone's has been able to actually come up with a solid patent behind some of the core ideas behind React. It doesn't look like Facebook has filed one. I think there's one patent application that mentions React by name. It's not really related though. So to the extent of my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there are actually any patents surrounding React as it stands currently. Yes, yeah. So I mean that kind of changes the game a little bit there. let's assume there are, you know, for the sake of argument. I think, again, to my knowledge, that patents generally have to be fairly narrow in scope to sort of get accepted anyway. So it is quite feasible in a lot of cases for people to, and it has happened in the past where people do fork libraries and engineer around the patents. I mean, how complicated a process that will be will wholly depend on the situation, I think. But you know, let's say if there was some minor aspect of React that was patented and was causing trouble, I think it's quite likely that the community would rally behind something like React and try to make it a clean, patent-free alternative. Engineer away the parts that violate, you know, certain hypothetical patents. It's obviously much harder if the companies have to do it themselves. Like maintaining a fork with React by itself is like a huge pain. I think it's more of a situation where the community would probably rally behind a single you know thing, whether it's React or something like it, if that were to be the case.
I can go to the legal one now from Ben Hode. Have you ever experienced a client trying to patent something that, in your opinion, was pointless and too vague? You don't have to give explicit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, often initially the first inquiry that comes through the door is something that is in the person's mind, is something that's valuable, is something that they think they're going to make a huge amount of money out of. There are a few reasons that things might not progress. One of those is that the cost, for instance, the cost of getting patent protection might absolutely outweigh the commercial advantage you're going to get from getting a patent. By that I mean, you might have to sell. I had somebody come in with a new type of official at one stage, and he was talking about, I think, selling these for, I forget what it was, but it was, I think they were going to be a couple of cents each, these officials. So basically, he was going to have to sell absolutely millions of officials to get his money back. So from that point of view, it might have been a good invention, it might have been a valuable invention, but the commercial side, it really wasn't worth proceeding. I've had people who come in and wanted things that were really not patentable. There are things that are excluded from patentability. Things like discoveries, pure discoveries without any sort of practical application. You can't get a patent for that. I had somebody come in, a mother and daughter come in at one stage, and they wanted to get a patent for turning the wool from their poodle into clothing. So that didn't progress. So yeah, there are lots of things, and for various reasons, there are lots of things that don't go ahead yet.
I guess that's always been of interest with these type of scenarios too, because this is built on the back of an open source language. Yeah. Like how can you put a patent around something which is open source anyway? And yeah.
Yeah, and look, to be honest, it's something we haven't touched on at this stage, but what we call computer implemented inventions, which are anything that's run on computer software and systems that are computerized, things like that. They're a difficult area to get patent protection for at the moment. So patent offices around the world don't really like these sort of inventions. There are some judicial decisions both in Australia and the US that sort of back up patent offices' position at the moment. So it can be quite difficult to get these patents through. And that leads back onto what you were saying, Tom, that just because somebody has a patent for these things and they might make a lot of noise about enforcing their patent, it doesn't mean they're going to be able to, because patent offices around the world consider themselves to be core sieves. So things will slip through, which is unfortunate, but it's just the way things work. So the things will slip through that aren't valid, that perhaps weren't new at the time that they were filed. The examiner might have missed a document that disclosed those sorts of things. There are ways of challenging the validity of patents. So, like I say, just because somebody has a patent, it doesn't mean it's valid and enforceable.
Just a quick question. Have there been many situations where overly general software patents have been accepted and have just caused havoc for 10, 15 years because it's way too broad?
I guess there are, and that also touches on the patent troll sort of issue as well. There's a lot of patent trolls will have patents that really probably aren't enforceable. There was one recently that I saw which was a method of, I think you hooked up your computer to a printer and it was as simple as that. Yeah, exactly. It was as simple as that. There might have been something more to it, but it was very, very simple. It was something that everybody did, everybody does, and these non-practicing entities were able to send out threatening letters, basically threatening patent infringement. So from that point of view, there are things that get through that shouldn't, those sort of things shouldn't. There are, particularly in the US, when I was talking about ways of invalidating patents, there is a process you can go through before it's called the PTAB, the Patent Control Administration Board. And at the moment, in terms of computer implemented inventions, something like 80-85% of computer implemented inventions that go through the process before PTAB are actually revoked. So at the moment, there are the US Patent Office feels that there are a lot of software patents out there that shouldn't have been granted, and they're getting revoked en masse at the moment.
And even if one does get granted, and someone tries to enforce the patent, for instance, against someone else, they've got to go through the process of proving it in court. So if you've been granted an overly broad patent, and for whatever reason the court considers that it shouldn't have been granted, it's a massive risk, because that person, if they lose on validity before a judge, they'll be up for millions of dollars in the other side's cost. So it's not without risk to enforce a patent that you think might be a little bit too broad.
So this question actually follows on to that. This is from @Fud on Twitter. Isn't this a system where the biggest person wins, as it is so expensive? And I guess that's the other thing I've always looked at too, is they don't need to win, they just need to drain you.
Yeah, well, and that's, I mean, it's the case with any legal situation, I guess, is that if you've got deep pockets, you can potentially drag things out. It is unfortunate. It's the unfortunate way the system works. So yeah, that is an issue. There are companies out there that will fund litigation. So if you're in a situation where you potentially have a patent, you want to enforce it, the other side's been a larger company is trying to sort of basically wear you out, there are companies that will fund that litigation. You have to have a pretty good case though, because obviously they're not going to take something on that they think is an absolute loser. So you have to have a pretty good case. But if you are in that situation, there are ways of funding that.
I'm going to ask Tom another one, because no one's asking. Someone asked some technical questions. The Twitter stuff's great, but technical questions. Anyway, I had some in reserve. Shit, now I've forgotten it. What was it? It was, oh yeah, so when you're scoping a project for a new client and you want to use, well, not just React, but any language, is the first place you stop after you've scoped out what you want to use the legal department? Like, does this inhibit you from being able to do your day-to-day?
I think it's interesting. It's like it's two different questions. Like, should it inhibit you and does it inhibit you? And I think there's two different answers to that question. Look, I think for myself personally, in the past when I've done personal client work, it hasn't. One of the first things I do consult is the license for the stuff I use. But in many contexts, again, and this is like a scale thing, right? Like there are situations where you don't have a legal department to go to, and I think in a lot of cases, people feel that as long as you can consult the license and sort of make a reasonably informed decision from there, you're usually in the clear. I think like all things, it's a lot of calculated risks, and at the same time, you want to act making sure that you're doing the right thing and following the license of the software that you're using. But of course, there's always going to be a risk of you misinterpreting that, or you create some client work, and then maybe 10 years down the line it comes back to haunt you in this huge lawsuit. You completely missed a clause in the license. I mean, it can happen. But I think, luckily, the open source ecosystem we have today is very good, very permissive, and it allows you to create a lot of really sort of business critical apps. With fairly permissive licenses, and you can sleep soundly at night, knowing that you're probably not going to be violating anything. If the things MIT, there's no patents clauses anyway, which is I think is why the community freaked out so much about React in particular.
Why are you coding at night? What's wrong? How enforceable? So how enforceable is this is from Garrows? How enforceable is a software license violation? What actually happens if Facebook revokes my license?
So I'm going to hijack this. Could you give like a brief, I guess, plain English summary of what the patent clause actually entails in the context of React? I'm assuming you've had a gander.
I read. I might even actually throw to you guys.
Yeah.
To the legal side. Yeah.
A new addition to the panel.
Going around this way. I'm going to say something fairly controversial. I think it's a big beat up. I actually don't think. I think it's just because the word patents in there, people are all freaking out. This is what the clause says. Basically says that we granting you a license to use React, and if you assert a patent claim against Facebook or one of Facebook's related entities, we're no longer going to grant you that license, it will cease. So in other words, we're giving you something for free, and if you sue us for patent infringement, because Facebook justifies it on the basis that they're sued by patent trolls all the time, well then the license ceases and you don't get it for free anymore. So, well, let's just take a step back on that. Everyone's worrying about React and the license term that's in there. If you're infringing the patent and you don't use React at all, say you're not using React at all, if you're infringing one of Facebook's patents, you're going to be in a worse position by not having React in your product, because React grants you a license. So if you are infringing the patent and you haven't entered into an agreement using the React open source terms, you're arguably liable for more damages than what you would be liable for had you entered into an agreement using React. So that's for that reason I don't think it's a problem at all. Having said that, there can be problems with open source sometimes, and everyone's focusing on the patent side of things. I think we all just need to take a broader look. There's other types of IP beyond patents that can cause issues, copyright for instance. Really good example of where open source caused a big vendor an issue, for any of you who don't know before, was the issue that affected VMware in recent years, where VMware was using GNU license code allegedly in one of their products, one of their very key products to their enterprise, and it was alleged by the person who was the open source licensor that VMware was not relicensing their source code on the same terms upon which they licensed their open source to begin with. And therefore they were a breach of the license, and therefore they purported to terminate that license. Problem for VMware is that they had that product in millions of places all over the world. So to terminate that license for VMware is an absolute disaster, because any point they continue to use that product going forward, from the date in which that license was terminated, they're infringing that person's copyright. So that is a major problem. So what I will say is, yes, be aware of things like React, but keep track of any open source you use in your product, because if you're building a product and ultimately you're going to sell your business or your company to someone else and make squillions of dollars, that person who's buying your business or your company will engage lawyers who will do due diligence. And through that process of due diligence, we'll make sure that we discover every single little bit of third-party code within the product, and if anything is going to cause an issue later down the track, well then we might use that as leverage to try and drive the price down. So good business practice and good coding practice is just to make sure that you're aware of what third-party product you're putting into your products. Keep track of it, because then when you're asked the question, what third-party product, what do you own and what's third-party or open source, you'll be able to say, I own this part, and this is all the open source product that is in my end product, and here are all the license terms attaching to it, and you'll look really professional as a result.
I guess off the back of actually that was a can that was really good. No, off the back of that, can you retrospectively get a patent? I'm going to cut. That was from _____kid on Twitter. I think I got them all. I'm going to add to that as well and say this is from anyone know the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the Improbability Drive? I love that concept. Anyway, it's basically that. I've patented time travel and I've already done it.
I'm going to pass back to the patent attorney in the room.
So to get a valid patent, on the whole, you have to have not disclosed the invention before you file a patent application. In some countries, there are staving provisions. It's called a grace period against self-disclosure, and Australia's one, the US is another one, where if you filed a patent, if you've disclosed an invention publicly, you can still get valid patent protection as long as you file what's called a complete patent application within 12 months of that first disclosure. If anything, if you've fully disclosed an invention more than 12 months ago, then yes, there's no way you can get a patent, basically. In some countries as well, any public disclosure before you file a patent application will immediately mean you can't get valid patent protection. Europe is one of those. I guess it comes down to, as well though, how much of the invention has actually been disclosed. If you've disclosed part of a product or part of a method, but not the entire method, you can still potentially get patent protection for that entire method. So, there are ways of looking at it. If you've only disclosed part of it, if you perhaps disclosed a product that's produced by a particular method, then you can still potentially get protection for the method itself because that method hasn't been disclosed. So there are ways of looking at it. You know, it can be a problem, but again, it just depends on what that disclosure has been.
This one's from Outfun, and there's some debate whether it's a joke or not from Corey. I kind of think it's both, because it's actually not a bad idea. Can the patent office be moved to the blockchain? Blockchain solves everything.
Absolutely. Right. What can't blockchain do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Might get some more sensible results out of it.
Oh, no, that was it. Oh. I know, other questions. Oh, wait, yep.
If, say hypothetically, I develop a product, can you hear me clearly?
Yep.
I develop a product, but I've used React in some way, and I feel Facebook is now infringing that patent. I can't do anything to protect myself.
That's going to be it, isn't it?
Yes, you can. Good news. So if you feel Facebook's infringing your patent and you've developed a product using React, or worst case scenario, Facebook, if you write a letter to Facebook and say, and you're very brave in doing it, say, dear Facebook, you're infringing my patent for XYZ reasons, you'll probably get a very angry letter back very quickly, along with other things probably.
Maybe some stickers.
Yeah. I'll throw in some stickers for the wall too. And what will happen is you'll get that angry letter back in it, they'll say, oh, pursuant to our React terms, you agreed not to allege patent infringement against us. You have. We terminate your license. You go, okay, no worries, I'm not going to use React anymore. I'm going to use different stuff, so that's all good, and I'm still going to keep suing you, by the way. So you can still sue them. You just can't keep using their patents to the extent we know even what they are, which we don't. But assuming we did, you couldn't use their patents under license for free anymore. You just stop it, as I think we discussed, you fork it or something like that. Fork the code base, go in a different direction, and keep on suing them your happy merry way.
So assuming that in the context of if let's say, hypothetical other direction, if Facebook does in fact have no meaningful patents or any patents relating to React, to what extent does the patent clause hold any sway anyway? If there's no patents to be violating in the first place, would this whole thing be a patent title?
I think that's exactly what I think I call it. Yes, that's right. That's right.
Awesome.
It'd be a bigger concern for me personally if it wasn't a patent license that was being terminated, but it was a copyright license that was being terminated. If it's a copyright license that's being terminated, then all the product that you've got out with your customers that's using React and whatnot, you'd have to gut it all and cut out whatever sort of infringing code was in there and replace it with other code. If it's a patent license, well, there's other things you could potentially look to do. I mean, it might still be complicated as well. But if it were a copyright license that was terminating simply because you asserted patent infringement against Facebook, in some ways that may actually be a bigger problem.
I'm going to throw you a can of worms now. So yeah, and I've been following a lot of this stuff for like many years, just being associated to tech, and interesting to see how, as a developer, like I can build like pretty much anything, but then there's a whole bunch of laws in the way that say no sometimes. How does this work in space? So this is under UN treaty, which is completely open slather, but kind of not.
That's a really interesting question. How far in space are we talking? Like, are we still in the atmosphere, or are we like on Mars?
No, upper atmosphere, so enough to maintain an orbit, but not quite Earth jurisdiction.
I wasn't expecting that question, Tony. You were expecting it?
There are, so at the moment, the space is like the high seas, or it's like Antarctica, so nobody has any jurisdiction over any invention that's made in a particular country, in those places.
It's the final frontier.
So if an invention is made in those places, then basically nobody has any particular rights over it. Having said that, the US Patent Act includes a clause where they say if there's a particular patent invention that's made or used or sold on a spacecraft that is under the control or ownership of the United States government, then that's considered to be US territory. So the US has Germany, I think, has a similar clause in their Patents Act as well, but basically nobody else has done anything along those lines at all. So it's a bit of a complete unknown at the moment.
Patent round version 2.
I felt so clever when I received the notes and you said interstellar patent law. I was like, oh, this is clearly a typo. I was like, oh.
It's a whole thing. There's a whole new nation being created right now, Asgardia. I kid you not. Look it up.
So, if I am serving my React from space or just some jurisdiction, is it important where I'm serving it from or where the code is being run in the user's browser?
Yeah, that's really hard. So, patent infringement is assessed on a country-by-country basis. So, you know, if you are making or selling or using a product in a particular country where there's a patent, then you'll infringe that patent. If you are doing it in a country where there isn't a patent, say you're doing something in North Korea, for instance, where you can file patents, but why would you? Then you're probably free to do whatever you want there. Well, with you. So the internet's a difficult one, and I'm going to throw Hayden in a second for this one as well. But publication on the internet or doing something through the internet is more difficult. You know, traditional technology. So if you're making a product, for instance, a physical product, it's pretty easy to tell where the jurisdiction is where that was happening. Things like the internet are much more difficult because it's not purely jurisdiction based. So if you're doing something, if you're delivering a product or a program or something like that to somebody in another country, even though you might be located here, you know, perhaps doing something for somebody in the US, you can still infringe that US patent even though you never leave Australia. Everything you do is based in Australia, but the act of sending it through to somebody in the US could infringe a US patent. Did you want to add to that one?
I don't think I have too much to add to it. I think everything Jonathan said there is correct. Say if we use an example like software as a service or something like that, assuming it's a software patent, it's largely going to be a method, right? So a way of doing things. And that way of doing things is more going to be determined upon how your users receive the product or use the product in a particular way in accordance with those methods. So the fact that you might be hosting the software on the International Space Station but making it available to end users in the United States, that would be an infringing act in the United States if there were a hypothetical patent there or anywhere in the world for that matter. So the mere fact that hosting it somewhere outside the patent jurisdiction doesn't get you around the act of infringement.
Is that because of where the user that's using the service is located or where the code is running? So if
it's much more likely to be where the user is located, because patent infringement is about demonstrating loss in a particular market. So where does that loss arise? It's say you've got a user, Joe Blogs in the United States, signs up to subscribe to a SaaS service, and he's in Delaware or somewhere like that. Well, the patentee, assuming they had a valid patent in the United States, would say, well, if it weren't for you making this software available from the International Space Station, I would have made a sale. So I didn't because you came in and infringed my patent, so I am entitled to make a claim against you for damages, even though you're in the space station. However, it would be difficult practically to serve those documents. You probably need to get an order for substituted service to serve by email or something like that. But you could still do it. Yeah.
I have a question. React is open source. People contribute around the world to build this software. Is that not belong to all the people around the world? Is the code still valid for in this context?
Well, again, so you're kind of talking about notions of copyright there more than anything. So when you're a developer, you create source code, that's a literary work in the Copyright Act. The standard definition for ownership in the Copyright Act is unless you're employed by someone, the creator of the work, here source code in question is the owner of the copyright. And then, as the owner of the copyright, you agree to certain license terms, say the React open source license terms. You're still the owner, but you've licensed it to everyone to use in accordance with the React license terms. So, you'll still, even if you contribute to the React community, you're still the owner of it and the author of it in a sense, but you've licensed everyone in the world to use it in accordance with whatever terms that license is. Does that make sense? So although you're sort of the owner, everyone can use it however they want, provided they act within those license terms. If they contravene those license terms, then actually you, as licensor, can terminate their license and then sue them for copyright infringement. And that's how all open source works. That was exactly the situation VMware found themselves in with that rogue developer that terminated the GNU license. So you still retain ownership rights, it's just that you've licensed it until they've breached it and you terminate that breach.
I actually have a way to one up the space question. I don't know whether I should use it or not because it'll just blow everyone's entanglement. No. That involves time travel. Just to wrap up, I was going to ask one of my favorite questions to ever ask kernels, which is, what was your first computer?
Oh jeez. It's like my dad's work laptop, which was mint at the time. It was like 1999. It was pretty rad. I remember playing Warcraft 3, so maybe a little bit later. And the screen was like so dark, I could only make out the like blurs and shapes. Oh man, it was sick. It was my first gaming rig. Yeah, it was
Intel graphics.
Oh, mate. Only the finest.
I'm going to date myself a little bit with this one, but my first computer was a Commodore VIC-20.
Ah, yep.
Yeah, classic. I think my parents thought that I would take to programming pretty well, but I don't know. I tried writing basic programs and that didn't work, so I wasn't gifted in that way.
I'm in the same area, Atari 800 XL with a 5.5-inch floppy.
Yeah. Mine had cartridges to plug into.
Oh yeah,
Fantastic.
QBasic was like amazing.
Yeah.
Just racking my brain, but I think, if memory serves me correctly, it was the whatever model was immediately before the Pentium. I wanted the Pentium, but Dad wouldn't cough up the dosh for the Pentium, so we got the one right before that, and I think it was like a DS4. I don't know, I'm completely making up. Someone in the room might know whatever was the model before the Pentium, but yeah, I think that was my very first computer.
Cool. Thank you very much. That was our panel. Everyone, big round of applause. I believe pizza's on now. I have to finish on just 2 more slides. Okay. Oh, I love doing these ones. I thought I'd do a quick demonstration of 8-bit open source. I like animated slides. Oh. Thank you very much. I've done way too many PowerPoints. This is my 108th talk, but who's counting? Anyways.
108, that's pretty fantastic. So yeah, we've got pizza and beer. Unfortunately, the beer is twist tops and we haven't actually got anything to open them with, so good luck. Tops, yeah.
You can use 2 though. We put 1 in the...
There we go. So ingenuity, I'm sure someone around will have an open up. Vegetarian pizzas are on the right, we've got the meat and miscellaneous pizza on the left. Enjoy it.
Yes, 186, 286, 386, 486, and AMD released the KS586. So it's really good and compact.
Yeah.
Alrighty, folks. I guess we're going to kick this next one off. We've got Kim Rogers talking about .NET and Node interoperability, which is going to be pretty exciting, I think. And then we'll follow up with Python talks. So once more, if you've been doing anything interesting, if you want to stand up and show off what you've been working on, this is your opportunity. We'll continue. Cool. Applause. Round of applause. Everyone, yeah, let's do it.
So any Node devs in the room? Anyone working in like mainly the actual Node side rather than JS side? Cool. Any .NET devs? Nice couple of people. Bit of background before I get stuck into this. The reason I'm talking about this is a couple months back, I had a project where we were looking at integrating with Skype. It's a bunch. Ooh, hello. Skype has a bunch of new JavaScript SDKs. So for the new Skype for Business clients, you can wrap it all up in browser, create custom experiences for things like room clients or everything else. Really, really nice. So we started building a project out for a client which used this and depended on it heavily. So all the design of their rooms and conferencing system were based around in-browser experience for this. Around 2 weeks out from that project going live, we had the test system there ready to go. We rolled it out onto their infrastructure, basically flipped a big power switch on it, and went nothing worked out there. Just nothing. Couldn't get it to authenticate, couldn't even start testing anything. Turns out there's Skype for Business, there's also the legacy link infrastructure, which is also called Skype for Business depending on the version, but it's not compatible at all. Guess which one they were running. But there's some hope. Yeah, so the first like I guess instinct when all this happened was we're sitting there going, we've burnt all this effort, we've got like 2 weeks to do the project. So this was sort of me. So we're faced with a couple of options of basically just backing away from the functionality completely, which would have been pretty bad from a relationship point of view. It sort of said, hey, look, you can do all this stuff, it'll be fantastic and great. Or trying to sort of pop something together in some weird mesh of technologies that will do something interesting. So we started looking at some tech, and we're looking at going, do we do like a Windows desktop app, or do we try to build something else in other tech, or mush together these other weird little things? We had a bunch of front-end components already in JavaScript, we want to try and use them. So rather than throwing out one side, we found something interesting that would let us use all these existing components into one app and do it quite quickly. At this point, you'd be mistaken for thinking that it was going to be interesting technically, like mushing all these different pieces together. The more we dived in, it actually got a little more interesting. So there was some really nice little bits. I want to try and give you guys a bit of an overview of the process we went through, as well as other places where this tech could be used. So, the tech I'm talking about, BrisJS. Anyone heard of it?
Yeah.
Cool. So a couple. I like this.
Nothing to do with the browser?
No. Again, like confusing naming technology. It's a theme. Don't do it. So it's put together by the guys behind Alt0 and Webtask. Thomas, I can't pronounce his last name. The dude's a freaking wizard. So I take no credit for anything here. I'm just a user of the library, but it's freaking awesome. So I want to try and give you guys a bit of an overview of what Edge is, some of the problems it tries to solve, a gentle introduction to just starting to use it. So just a couple little things to go, cool, here's how you use Edge in a project. As well as when it might be useful for use cases outside the context we're used in. So there's a whole bunch of areas where this mushing together different technologies can actually be quite nice. As a high level, it's in process intro. So none of this having to set up IPC between Node and .NET and Windows services, it's all happening in process. So it's really nice little things for that. And although it's .NET, it is actually cross-platform. So on Windows, you're going to be running on CLR. If you're on a Unix OS or Mac, you're running in the Mono framework. But everything in this framework is completely cross-platform. So yeah, apologies for some of the sort of just abuse of memes so far. We'll actually dive into some technical content, so sorry. Not sorry. So one of the initial things is why would you ever want to do this? Like, why would you be adding in all this tech and sort of crossing things over? There are definitely situations where you are going to want to have, say, a .NET service running and have a Node service talking to that. So that's one approach to doing it. But there's some reasons where you might not want to choose like a monolithic Node stack or monolithic .NET stack. They each have their advantages and disadvantages. So some things Node, it's single-threaded and it's event-driven. So if you're doing anything that's CPU bound, you're probably going to have a bad time. Just the framework doesn't lend itself to anything in that context so well. If you're working with legacy tech, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, Node's still relatively new. So there's a bunch of technology from even 10 years ago where there's just not the implementations in Node, but there might be implementations in other frameworks which have more of that history. You have existing components, such as what our case was, which you need to try and sort of push in and use. You don't want to re-implement things when there's already something which is nice and working. Or you or the team you're working with have a lot of knowledge in .NET. Like if you're going, oh yeah, cool, we want to try Node in this thing, but all of your experience is in .NET, may not be the easiest project to deliver. Also situations where there might be a superior implementation elsewhere. So some of the stuff which people using Edge go into is things like lots of work with MS SQL and starting to do in-memory data processing and then pushing that out to an MS SQL database. It's not best to do that straight within Node. It's not overly efficient. On the flip side, reasons you might not want to use C#. It's .NET. That's a bit of a cop-out though. It's easy life in BrisJS. It's not ideologic. So if you're trying to settle with one stack which is going to run, particularly in the web context, same code on the back end, same code on the front end. If you're doing desktop apps, yeah, sure, you'll be able to do some C# there. But if you're trying to do stuff in browser, you don't have until WASM comes out properly, you don't really have the ability to do C# on the front end. There's a much smaller package and open source, package ecosystem and open source community. There doesn't seem to be that same sort of mind share with people just going, hey, I created this thing, go use it, go nuts. And similar thing, you might have components which are already in Node, which you want to use. And also less familiarity. So the same thing of, if you are coming from somewhere which is mainly a Node house, you might not want to have to be implementing all this stuff in C#. You just don't have the skills, the want, or you might just find Node a better language to work in. So, in a normal scenario, if you're wanting to do this non-monolithic stack, so piecing together some different pieces of technology, you spin up components in Node, which is going to be spinning up a V8 VM. Then you'll spin up some components in .NET, so that's going to be spinning up either the CLR runtime or Mono, depending on the platform you're on. And then between them, you'll set some sort of RPC. So whether it's like a gRPC or JSON RPC or any sort of API you want to pop in there. Some form of way to get those processes communicating. So there's some issues with that. It adds a bunch of latency, complexity as well, and then you've got issues with ops and security of that, because now you have these different processes which can talk together, which means other things can talk to them. So let's introduce Edge. So within Edge, we still spin up Node. That spins up the V8 runtime inside there. We still spin up the .NET CLR or Mono, but instead of having this RPC mechanism between them, Edge sits between them inside that same process boundary. So it's basically taking that role of where you normally have RPC, they're doing all the communication between those different runtimes, we're doing it inside that one process boundary. So you get some efficiency gains from that, and it's just simpler to work with. Okay, so our first bit of code. This is using Edge. So if we step through what's actually happening here, you start Node, starts up the V8 runtime. So we now have that running. We got there, we require Edge. That's going to spin up the CLR runtime inside that Node process. This edge.func, that is wrapping some C# code. What's happening here? This is just some text being passed in there. That's going to be compiled on the fly into an in-memory assembly. And then we can call that like a normal JavaScript function, which will then marshal it from V8 over to CLR, process that, and send us back a response. Nice and simple, still with me? Cool. So, to show you what I'm doing, is it running on RunKit. We can see our output down here. Let's just make sure this is definitely live. I'll rerun that. Making the call across, we're getting environment info out of .NET as well as the platform we're running on, spinning that back. So there are a couple of things when you are using it. You can't just call into any .NET code. You have to stick to this func object, task object, delegate pattern. What this does is it normalizes CLR into just a simple async pattern. So with this, remember, node, single-threaded, this lets you have these sort of non-blocking operations. So you can call out into any of the .NET processes into a thread pool there, and then Edge will reconcile those different concurrency models, and then give you your information back into that node eventually. So most of the time, if you've got some C# code, you're not going to have it in this sort of delegate model. What we end up doing is just creating a essentially a static class of simple little functions, which just bindings into everything else that's happening. So nice and simple to adapt things over. Okay, so there's a couple of ways of setting this up. Just string literal, like we saw before, just pass it in, it'll compile it, you're set to go. Pardon me. If you are on ES5 or below, you can pass it in as multi-line inside a comment. Edge will actually pass that out via regex, compile it, do it all nicely. If you're on ES6, you can just use template literals. So it keeps it nice and simple. You can still have these multi-line, nice formatted C code inside the C#. If you've got something more involved, you can have entire classes in there. So on our other ones, that will go back. On our other ones, it's all just this simple inline lambda. Can't really do too much complexity there, but once you start diving into things, you might want something a little more complex, so you can call that into any sort of C# code that you want. There's a few things here. Is if you are doing the whole class setup, the class needs to be called sub, and the function you call it needs to be called invoke. That's it. And you just need to keep that func object, task object, delegate format. That's going to get to be a bit of a pain in the ass if you've got all this C# code inside all your JavaScript code. It's like working with any language where you can try to combine multiple languages into one file. It's just not pretty. So it's just a string. So you can import that any way you want. Any way you want to get into there, have the C# code separately. That'll still compile it on the fly into that in-memory assembly, and you can run it. Okay, so everything so far being compiled on the fly. That's not going to be the best for every scenario. So you can have precompiled libraries, call straight into them. Same thing, it'll default to invoke for the method name and startup for the class. So you can emit the type name, emit the method name, just call that to a DLL. You can also bring in references, so if you need to have other DLLs there as part of it. If you're using those defaults though, you can also just pass in the DLL default. So it's nice and simple. Cool. So we've got the bindings in there. Now to invoke it, we have two ways. We can just call it asynchronously, so no callback pattern. Call as though it was just a native internal function. Nice and simple, and call back with your error result. Otherwise, if you do have synchronous C# code, you can call it this way as well. If it doesn't complete synchronously, you'll get an exception, so you can handle all that. But most of the time, you're going to be calling it as though it was the internal node function. Quickly, marshalling, basically anything you can serialize to JSON, you can pass between the two runtimes. So it comes across that most of the data types are as you'd expect, so nice and simple. I think the only weird ones are objects come across as dynamics, so you can still dot into them the same way as if you're working in JSON in JavaScript. Arrays come over as an array of objects. So again, just drilling down through that whole thing, and buffers come over to a byte array. That's it. Everything else just seems to make sense. One thing though is everything is passed by value. So because there's these two separate VMs running, there's separate garbage collection processes happening in them, so you don't have anything coming across and sharing that state once it's there. One thing I haven't mentioned here though is you can also pass functions across those boundaries. So you can pass a node function into C# and execute that at a later time. That's where it breaks the pass by value. And vice versa. Okay, so sponge code, how to implement it. I want to show you guys some of the magic that this lets you actually achieve. This is where it gets super, super interesting. So if you want multi-threading from a node, call into it. When you come into your function, you're still going to be on the V8 thread. As soon as you drop into those async tasks, you're on a CL thread pool. You can do whatever the hell you want. So you're not blocking the node event thread at that point. You can do whatever you want, call back to it when you're done, everyone's happy. This opens you up to some interesting things as well. You can call to any native libraries. So your Windows auth and your Node app, there you go, done. Any of the native platform libraries you can call into. If you want things which are CPU bound tasks, you want to do some image conversion, no problems, done, simple. If you want to do, what else can we do? Oh yeah, you can also go the other way. So this is symmetric. You can embed node code in C#. There's a NuGet package, search for Edge, you'll find it there. So if you're more comfortable working in C# and you want to bring in node components, do it, go nuts. Cool. I've been talking about C#, but this is inter-process communication with CLR. So any language that compiles down to CLR, this will work with. F#, if you want to get your functional neckbeard on. Python, there's a CLR implementation for that. If you really want, DB. PowerShell. And there's a Lisp implementation as well. So I know that the guy that built it was looking for someone to try and get a COBOL implementation up and going. So if anyone wants to help out with that, probably get in touch with him. For those working in TypeScript, we started using with it. I can't stand not having type safety, so everything to do is in TypeScript. So if you search on npm for HTS, one little package we put together, it's just a simple little wrapper over it. Gives you a couple of things, type bindings, so actually know what you're sending to it, what's coming back. Promises for all the async work, and just a nice sort of light API if you're trying to bind onto more composable binding targets, so things in the same DLL, things that are using the same references, that sort of thing. Cool. That's it from me. My Twitter handle is that crazy one with all the underscores, so just hit me up by simple.industries, there's links up there, it's easier than typing it. I also work for ACA projects, so we're Brisbane-based, also Brisbane and Sydney-based, you know, probably more startup-y at the moment, and we just build a platform for control platform for the Internet of Things. But any questions? Yeah.
Is there a .NET Core story as well as .NET?
Yeah, so it is. I'm trying to remember. There's if you're using .NET Core, I think there's a little compile flag you need to switch on when it builds, and then it'll target that instead. If you check their docs, they've got it.
So you gave an example where the .NET code in the JavaScript was comment. How does that not get compiled out?
So we're back on.
Yeah, sorry. Back along.
Like this one here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Edge looks at that JavaScript file, uses a regex to match what's in that function, and then compiles that. So Edge has its own C# compiler built in, but that's what's actually looking at that original file.
So I guess on top of that, the question is, when you create a function in JavaScript, do you also get the comments as part of that function? Is that how that's working under the hood?
Yeah, well, it'll just take whatever that is and pass it into a C# compiler. So whatever's in there, it has to be obviously valid C# or you're going to have a bad time. But
I'm guessing the question around the first one of the comments is, how does it get that comment?
how does it get this?
Yeah, so that's because the function itself, if you go function toString, it toStrings the entire function body, which means that if you would, for example, go like var x equals that function, and then go func x, it would not work. Actually, so no, it would totally work. But if you call it within another function, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, remember this isn't JavaScript that's looking at that. That's a C# compile.
So if you run that in Node directly,
Yep.
JavaScript sees that comment. It edge.func gets that function passed into it. It will take that function, go .toString,
Yep.
get that, and then it will compile that.
Yep.
The question I guess is that people are asking is not how does it compile that, it is how do you get the text inside a comment?
Yeah, that was my question.
And it's by going function.toString.
Yeah,
Get the body
yeah.
of the function.
So I had a slide for.
I don't want to admit how I know that.
That's how it does it.
So the speed of the dynamic compilation.
Yeah. So that's definitely something that if you're wanting to experiment quickly, just have it compile on the fly. Anything which you're doing more permanently, you're going to have more efficiency to compile it out beforehand. Also then just from a security perspective, otherwise you're going to be compiling like arbitrary binaries to run on your system with no knowledge of what it's doing, and you can break out of that node process pretty easily.
So that means you put the compiled DLL in the same directory?
Yeah, so it's when you import it, it's when you import it like this, it's just relative to __ dir name, but you can push into wherever you like from there. I think there's also a way to list dependencies within your package.json, and Edge will pass it out from there. I'm not sure what the semantics are around that. Cool.
Kim Burgess, thank you very much. So we're going to some lightning talks, which are quick 5. I think Josh has prepared about 10 minutes. But is anyone interested in putting their hand up for a lightning talk? Okay, so we've got a few here already, and it looks like Corey's going to give us something as well. So first up, we've got Josh Bird, who's going to come up and teach us a little bit about what he's been doing with D3. Round of applause.
Anna, can I look up to your... For some reason, Ash is... do you have the... Yeah.
Whoa, that's really so how does it actually get the interrupt? Like, method, architecture, whatever?
I'm not sure. That's the magic of Edge. So it's a rather large project everything into it. So he's been building it since like 2012 or 2013.
Okay, that would explain it.
Yeah.
When I first saw it, when you said it, I was like, oh, it's RPC.
Yeah, no, it's all in process, which is what makes it interesting.
Wow.
But it's so you can use it for webtasks.io. That's the 0 one, so you can essentially
their default packages.
Yeah, so you can essentially marshal C# code. Send it to you, have it executed, and pass it back, do whatever you want. So you can sort of get this C# metaprogramming.
I wish I knew about this years ago. That would be convenient.
Alright, but yeah, some of the stuff opens up.
Use accessibility as the same name if you want to make it.
Alright.
That's fine.
Can you put the mic on?
Alright, hey, hello? Can you hear me? Ah, there we go. Alright, congratulations to Ash for finally getting me up, pressuring me up to do a talk. I work with Ash at the ABC. I only just started a couple of months ago, and I had to learn D3 by scratch. And so a little while ago, there was a solar eclipse, and we couldn't see it in Australia, but they wanted me to build this page where you can see the solar eclipse in the next 100 years, if you live that long. And here's the next 5 or 6 solar eclipses on a spinning globe. So in the next 5 to 10 minutes, I'm going to show you how to make a spinning globe in D3, hopefully. Okay, I'm going to use glitch.com because I think it's cool. And you can follow along if you've got a computer. I'm just going to make a new project here. If you've got a computer, I'm just going to call it world with my keyboard. world there, and we're going to go make the world. Here we go. Okay, this is the README. Welcome to the world. Spinning globe. You can follow me on Twitter. Twitter.com @Fox, PHOCKS. Okay, so this will have made a page, hopefully, called world.glitch.me. You can go to that page and it does the to-do thing. Okay, I'm gonna do this world. So it automatically updates, and you can click down here if you want to edit the project. That lets you actually view in real time what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is get rid of this main section here. I'm going to put a div with an ID of map, and that's where we're going to chuck our SVG in here. We're going to get rid of all this code in the client. We're going to plug in D3 here. Just going to put it in the HTML right down under here. Oh, that's not it. Yeah. Okay. So hopefully we've got that in there. Up here to let Glitch know that we've got D3 in there, we just chuck in labels there. Now we're going to create some variables. Const width equals 500.
Command plus.
Do we need a
Couple of fonts. Yep, beautiful.
There we go. Beautiful.
Too big.
Too big. Oh, we want to do that. Height equals 500. Okay, now we want an SVG. Const SVG equals. Okay, now we're going to do D3 to select our map. Right there. Okay, now it's selected. We're going to append the SVG right there. Cool. So now hopefully there's an SVG there. You can't see it because it's white. We're going to give it an attribute width. Width and an attribute height as height. Let's see if that made it any better. Yep, there it is. Okay, cool. We can inspect that. Is that kind of plus? Whoa! There we go. There we go. There's your SVG there. Okay, cool. Now we're going to need a map of the world. Here we've got Ash's website that he's made, which for some reason wouldn't load on my tethered internet. And it just kept redirecting. So here we go. It also doesn't really work that well in Firefox. But yeah, and it also doesn't get Antarctica. Save it, and that goes into there. I've already done it before. Now we want to get it into assets here, so you can just drag that in. That uploads. Whoa, that's not it. Yeah. There it is. There you can copy the URL and use it in your project. Yeah. So what do we want? Const URL equals. Well, that's big. Okay, and then we've used D3 to load the JSON up. It takes the URL and gives you a function, it's an error, and a GeoJSON. Okay, cool. Now what we need is a projection. So D3 projections are things like this. Can you see that? Okay, we want a projection like this one, D3 orthographic. There you go. So we go const projection equals D3 orthographic. We want a path, which is D3 path. This is the part that I don't really know what is. But geopath there, and we pass the projection into that. Okay, now we actually want to append the path on there. So I'm going to go const geopath equals svg append. We're going to append. What are we going to append there? Oh yeah, we're going to go like this. And we're going to append a path. Yeah? We got any D3 experts in there? Look good?
You might want to make it not a string, maybe.
No.
That is right.
I can always, no. And then we want an attribute. Attribute with a D stands for draw, I think. Then we feed this path in and the JSON that we just loaded. Okay, now hopefully, look at our thing that's loading. Oh, look, we've got a globe, but it's in the wrong area. So we can use D3 version 4 has a handy function called fitSize, and you can feed in an array with our width and height from before, and the object that you want to fit. So that's the GeoJSON that we just loaded, and hopefully. Oh no, probably shouldn't have done that. There you go. That's a bit big. Let's make it there. All right. Do we want to spin? Am I out of time? You want it to spin?
Go crazy. Spin.
Okay.
Spin.
Let's make it spin. Oh no, I want to do a let here. No, I should have just used. What?
It's the wrong way.
Okay, we can try that. We did that. Rotation. Right. Let a rotation equals 0, which it currently is. We're just going to do a simple set interval because that's the easiest way. I did it a different way before. Okay, set interval. What does set interval take? Function. And let's make it happen every 100 milliseconds. So we want to go rotation. You want it minus. We want it to go backwards. Now we want to update the projection. And we want to rotate that projection by the rotation of. Okay, and now we just need to set that path, this geopath here, and put the attribute there. Now, what's going wrong? Projection rotation. It's not. Yeah. Come on. Oh, is it Anna's internet? No! It's still not working. What have I done? Can anyone see what I've done? Attribute rotation. So that should be setting that. I've got one that I prepared earlier here. Even that one's not loading. What did I do? Let rotation equals 0 plus. Oh yes, I did that before as well. That has to be an array because it goes 0, 0 because you rotate it that way, and that way. So now we're rotating. Okay, thank you, and that's how you do it.
Crash course for D3. That's Josh Bird, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Aaron Smith of Fun Capture fame, here to talk about what he's been up to.
Still on the mic.
You are.
Oh, yes. I didn't go to the toilet.
Get that out. Yeah.
Oh, you stole the clip too.
It's really good world automation talents.
Yeah, it is.
Is that on? No, not really.
Yep.
Hear me all right?
Yep.
Good. All right. So, this is a sales pitch. But this is like a reverse sales pitch. I actually want to pay you. Looking for developers. And Ash was kind enough to convince me to actually tell you all what we do first. So, we are Fun Capture. We're a local Brisbane startup. You're pretty familiar with the squiggly text old capture. That's been broken for a very long time. Like, 2 or 3 years. Long time in computer land. So a few examples, you're all very familiar with that because you're developers. So Google's got the new version, which is training their AI, not actually stopping bots. But we can solve this with about 85% solve rate just by grabbing their pictures and feeding them to Amazon's image recognition service and grabbing like the keywords out of there. So yeah, not really stopping anyone. Just training their AI with someone else's AI. So this is what we do to solve it. We've got completely unique images. Every single one is completely unique. We have a 3D artist creating animals every day, except for weekends. We also work with MATLAB as well to help inform us like what are the really hard machine learning problems in the world, and we utilize that. So our system, if you put that into an image recognition service, it thinks it's smoke and maybe a cave. So it's not really too sure what that is. Let's skip over that one. We have some pretty big clients. EA is our biggest one, so FIFA, the game, one of the world's biggest games. They're our clients. We help them stop abuse of their marketplace. Big money going into their hundreds of thousands of dollars for, well, actually maybe tens of thousands of dollars for zero-day exploits on FIFA. But yeah, we're helping them stop abuse, and they're pretty happy with this as well. Looking forward to the next FIFA coming out next month. So, actually, I'll go back. We are hiring, but I'll go to some code. I really should have used that glitch. That was really awesome. So I just wanted to show you how to quickly implement us on your website. If you already had your public and private keys, it's pretty straightforward. But, so this is just a template express app. If we were to just grab the, I'm struggling here, I should put it on mirror mode. There we go. Good. So this is the app, Are You a Human? It's just serving a pretty simple template using EJS. So here's the index, and the template is, let's open that up. Sorry, the view. There we go. It's just your normal form and our fun capture. We also add in our API. Pass in the public key. That's all you need. So that renders out to this. So are you a human? My name is Glenn. That's your normal form stuff. So you just need to rotate the animal the right way up. Should I be a human or pretend not to be first?
Be a robot.
Okay, I'll be a robot. I don't know which way's up. I got 2 there because I've been practicing and got my IP. Got a bad reputation with IP. So since I'm a dumb bot, I just hit submit anyway. And the code takes me to So to show you what the magic is, it's under this verify endpoint. That's where the thing submits to. I take in the token that comes in from the FunCapture API, submit it to our endpoint, and we get back a pretty simple bit of data, which is solve true or false, and send it to humans or robots. And just for shits and giggles, I'll show you the I am a human one. See how I've got 3 this time? That's because you know, I've been flagged as a little bit dodgy here. So as I said, we're hiring. I should also mention, if you've really been flagged or we detect a botnet, we kick you up a security level. So here's Kick, one of our other big clients, using our super secure mode, which is polling objects. So if the static images are machine learned, we can just swap it out to a more secure version of making it fall vertically. No one's been able to machine learn that yet. So yeah, what we're looking for? We're looking for anyone between juniors to seniors. DevOps, full stack, front end, back end. Would prefer if you know, but if you want to know, Lambda and serverless tech, React, maybe even Preact, depending on the licensing issues. AWS as well, and we're dealing with a lot of big data because, you know, Beaker's huge. We're a profitable Brisbane startup, which is amazing. We actually do things like, you know, pay super. Trust me, I checked. We have a cool office in the Valley at the new startup precinct. We give stock options, not at the expense of pay. And we're really good with hours as well, like no crazy crunch times or anything like that. If you want to talk to me, hit me up afterwards or just best email me. Yeah, that's about it. Any questions? Do I have time for questions? I didn't time myself. Sure.
No questions? Look at Corey. Were you actually serious about wanting to stand up and wrestling? Awesome. Cool. We'll jump on up and we'll hook you up.
Doing real work.
Great sales pitch. Send you into new client business meetings.
Duplicate. Hello. This is just something fun I've been working on. I'm going to press this and then do it again. There we go. I'm just wrote a node bot to trade cryptocurrencies. Fun. This graph down here is a pretty line that has no reality to it. It doesn't work. I just broke that about 5 minutes ago. And yeah, it's pretty cool. It looks at all the different cryptos, and so far I've only lost about $100. But it's going good. So basically, as far as I've been working, I let the bot lose money, and then every now and again I come along and do a human trade and actually make money. But yeah, it's going pretty good so far. It's pretty much a flat line of it just like failing and then like, here you go, what you're supposed to do, and then it goes, no, okay, I'll just keep losing money. That's fun. Anyway, that's really not actually the point. The point is this is deployed on a service called now.sh, which is freaking awesome, and that's some work code, and that's what the fuck. Some shit, doesn't matter. So, who here's used now.sh? Is it not the best thing in the world? Like, oh, so good. If you haven't used it, you're about to be, love it. Caveat, oh sorry, I don't know what to say. So this is Windows using Bash on Windows, which is really good until it's not, and that's really fun.
Is it in, or is that?
It's internal. No, it's Windows. Of course not. Bingo! That surely doesn't exist. Cool. So let's make a Sublime here. Let's make a node server. Before I do anything, let's go index.js. Yeah, go right place, and I can go like I'm going to need C Lion, which is a module that I wrote. I'm going to need HTTP, because that's what else would you be using Node. Am I right? You can type correctly, which I can't. Then we go like, sweet, HTTP.create server, see lion, oh my god. Create listener. I'll get to that in a second. Actually, I'll get to it right now. That's because now listeners on 80, pretty obvious, really. Ben sent a GIF. Do something really basic like the home route, whoops, responds 1, 2 type. Yes, I've done that. You guys can't read that, can you? Request response. Sorry, I should have done this beforehand. Food. Alright, so there's my server. I'm almost 100% certain that this will not work because Windows has a firewall. Wow, what's that? Oh yeah, man, that's how she goes. That's the secret code you don't know about. Whoa. Oh, new. Okay, yeah, it's a constructor. I remember back when I forgot how to write code properly. Slash didn't know how to write code properly. I used to make these like constructors. Of course, you don't need constructors. Really? This is going well. You know what? It doesn't matter. I'm going to do something. I'm just going to do this the cheap way without even using any kind of routing, because routing is lame anyway. Just delete all that code. This is a terrible example. Yes. Okay. Cool. I'm not allowed to do that because I'm on Windows. Does my shit work? Yes, it does. Great. So now if I go Chrome, and then I go localhost 8080, it will go boom. Great. So we have no server. That took way too long. Now we need to make that npm I. It'll be like, whoops, not install. Knit. It'll be like, yeah, Stingo, great. Make a node module the same way. So then you go now, and it goes. Error, missing start script, that's fine. That's really easy to fix. You go, sweet, start.
That's the dependency.
Yep. Thank you. Good type checker. Node server, and don't forget to change this back to 80, otherwise it won't work. It'll just sit there and do nothing. You go now, and you go,
In dependencies, you got an extra comma.
There
you go.
Go now. Third time, it works every time, and it goes deploying, and then it'll go, it's ready, and you copy that, and then you go back to Chrome, and you go there, and it'll go deploying, syncing, doing all the things. This won't take too long. Messages. Very good.
There's a crazy cat bookmark.
Hey?
You're a crazy cat bookmark.
Yeah. I mean, have you seen these things?
Yeah.
It's amazing. Let's look at that while that's loading. Let's wait for that to load while that's loading. What can we look at while that's loading so that we can wait for the other thing to load? Oh man, I'd love doing ICO, just make free money. I can't believe that's not loading.
480?
No, it's no, I meant the crazy cut thing. Yes, that's amazing. It's still going, yeah, okay. This is the time filler. Go YouTube. Like, why do I have to click play? This is crazy. Are you kidding? There's a kid. Great. Oh, look at him go! You've got a cart. And you can spin and flip and it's so good though. And it Oh my god. I have a little word dependencies, but it's installing modules and building a project. F5, maybe it's done. Okay, so this, I think they're going through a bit of a growth period at the moment. Because the first couple of times I did this, you'd be like, go, and by the time you copied the link, it was up. Ooh.
How did you go from
Oh, yeah.
food to...
Next. Did I screw up? Oh, I did screw up. Sorry, what was that?
How did you go from food to whatever you wanted to apply?
Sorry.
Like food was all good, and then what are you waiting to apply?
I am just an idiot and I typed the wrong word. So
you're
that was...
building something on now.sh?
Yeah, so now is like a service, like a node service platform thingy. It's like a hosting service slash cool thing. I should probably let this one up that like tells me if it's screwed up. Oh, there you go, done. That's how fast it's supposed to be. Let me go to there correctly now, and it's going to boot up the service. Boom! Okay, that's online right now. Available to everybody. Yeah, it's auto scaled and everything. So currently there's one instance running. I totally typed now.ls, but that will show you guys the trading bot URL that totally may not have open APIs to let you trade my own money.
Don't worry, it's only live.
Yeah, exactly. So that's actually, I thought I put it up there, and I was like, YouTube Live, that could be really bad. Yes, but anyway, the cool part is, there you go, there's a service. That's a proper actual node process that if you guys were to DDoS me, it would only cost me very small amounts of money because we always scale to have many processes and be really good. That being said, there's some pretty cool features like I can go, I'm not going to do it. So like you can go like now, scale that URL that I posted just then, and it'll do exactly one instance of that, which if you're doing a cryptocurrency trading bot, it's really important because otherwise you have two bots running and they like fight each other and lose money twice as fast. Or, for example, before I knew about that API, you spin up your bot and you're like, sweet, because I used to run it on my laptop, of course, and I just have cats. So my default way of running this was to be like, I used to run on my laptop. If I close a lid, it would turn off, which would be bad, obviously, for cryptocurrency trading. So I used to do this, and that would be how I ran my bot. So I obviously improved that by putting it onto now, but now defaults to shutting down the process if it hasn't had a request in about 4 hours. So I wake up and my bot wasn't trading, or it lost money, or whatever. I think the ongoing theme here is that my bot loses money. Yeah, anyway, so that's now. How cool is that? That's it.
Go back to the crazy cat.
Oh, yeah, that's
What's going on? So I think, Tim, are you around somewhere? I think cool. We've got one more for the night. If anyone else has changed their mind and would like to stand up and have a go, raise your hand.
Do it.
Alrighty. Also, so I think this will be the last one for the night.
Let's see what you're doing there.
Okay, crazy cat, yeah.
That good? Yeah, good. Should just work, hashtag. Doing something wrong?
They've already seen the design.
No signal.
It's my friend's mom. Usually I but she was.
Love coding.
It's the new thing.
Oh, that was good. Yeah. Turn off again. There we go. Alrighty. So if you haven't seen Crazy Cars, there's Crazy Cars. This is also pretty good now. I'm going to look at later. And AWS Dev Day is happening tomorrow. For those who are interested. My name's Tim Marwick. I work at Magicraft with Josh Wolf. Teach kids how to code in Minecraft. I'm not going to talk about that today because we've talked about it quite a few times here. I'm going to start just by sharing something kind of cool that I've been just playing around with. I'm not doing anything too serious with it, but this is Google spreadsheet package on NPM, which is pretty cool because it means you can use it as your database. Like, really. This is a GraphQL. It's probably pretty tiny there. But this is actually, let me just get rid of that. This is a GraphQL server, which is actually getting its data from that spreadsheet. So if you go in here, we have Snorgle, Gregory, and NumPy Pin. If we add another one here, I'm just making these IDs up at the moment. So call it Fred. He's a giant blob. This will make more sense a bit later. Just give him some stats. We'll just call this string. So now if I query that, oh my god, I have Fred here from the Google spreadsheet. So you can do that really cheaply actually in code. Getting a monster for the monsters, I'm actually just running this.
Can you close the TS link output?
Hey?
Can you close the TS link output down the bottom?
Down here? Oh yeah, sure. Makes more sense. So I'm just getting this Google spreadsheet right. Basically that's the code. I won't go into detail what it's doing, but it's just loads of sheet. You just put your sheet ID in there. You have to do a few things. You have to like publish your Google spreadsheet. Like in here, you'd create a shareable link, as you're probably used to doing. You also need to go in here and publish to web. You just publish it as a web page. Then it makes it publicly available for your database, which is pretty cool. And then the even cooler thing is that if you actually set it up with API keys, you can do updates. So I have another annotation here. Changes the tag value to 100, so it's ridiculously overpowered. If I run that, can we see in here? That was changed to 100. Change it back. Prove that that's actually what happened. Oop. It may not have worked because I had it selected. So, there it is, back to 10. So that's pretty cool. You can do cool stuff with that. You can stand up like a static website and have like its own database without having to host the database anywhere. You can also do that with I did some cool stuff with GitHub as well, where in this, like I have a URL, And just write some code that if the URL is pointing at like a static file, like an MD file, you can actually serve your blog post for that. So like you'd have a combination of like GitHub and Google Docs to create like a pretty powerful database. So anyway, I thought that was pretty cool. I'm actually using it for an event we've got coming up, which I'm going to do a shameless pitch for. It's probably not relevant to most of you guys, but anyone, you might know somebody, so that's Google Sheets with Node.js. It's starting a little operation called Open Sourcery. It's kind of in connection with Magicraft. It's teaching coding, but for adults. We're going to do an event coming up on the 16th of September. If you're not already like massively put off React because of the fact that Facebook might sue you, possibly, maybe, probably not. Anyway, if you know anybody who's interested to learn these technologies, React, Redux, and then Apollo from GraphQL. We have an event, 16th September, it's at Just Digital People. It's going to be about $40, which is pretty reasonable for a software development workshop. And we're actually, yeah, that's at Just Digital People. It's going to be with Ben O'Neill, who's not here, and Josh Wolf, who's not here tonight, and me, who is here.
What's your level for your workshop?
Well, of course, beginners, pretty much. What we're going to do is build this a monster battler app. So we're going to start, actually, this is, check out this, Ben built this today. Let me set it up. Oh yeah, cool, that's good. Tiny. There we go. So I just built this afternoon in React, so that's pretty cool. You can select two monsters and then basically make them fight. That's as far as it goes at the moment. So we're going to start off with, put that in React, and you build the battle engine in Redux, and then we're going to swap that out for like GraphQL. It's going to be GraphQL client-side only. I've already built the server in TypeScript. It's an Express server. And then you can update to, so you get the monsters from there, and you push the battle events to there as well. I think that's all my slides, yeah. So, that's it. Questions?
The Google Dash spreadsheets, and then you put the GraphQL with that. Is that GraphQL your part of it?
Yeah, I made that. Super simple though. This code's actually on GitHub. If you're interested in our GitHub, it's a very new thing we're just starting. Open Sourcery TV. I bought the domain opensourcery.tv. So it's here, Apollo server code. I didn't push it there. But that's like, it's really easy to stand up a GraphQL server. Like if you wanted to experiment, you're wondering what GraphQL is, and you got like half an hour, go to the examples. I'm using Apollo server, it just came out recently. This is like the main server. You define two routes, GraphQL and graphical. Graphical is this thing. You get like a query UI, which is really cool for testing stuff. Then you define a schema. I've got my schema here with my monster, my battle, my turn. I've got a query to get the monsters, the battles, and the turns. I've got mutations, which are like create, update, and read events, and delete events. And that's it for that. And then you define resolvers, which resolve these. I'm using another cool technology I just discovered today called LowDB. It uses Lodash to create like a local JSON database, which just writes to a file, which is pretty cool for quickly testing stuff, like spinning up a backend without actually having it on a separate server. Yeah. But I thought about, but yeah, I just use that code. You read it, you read in the sheet, you read the rows, and then you just basically update the row values. The cool thing about that Google Spreadsheets thing is actually it pulls the rows in, and it creates an object with properties for each of these. So you just got like row.id, row.name, row.health, row.attack, and then you just like update your values if you want to, and then just call row.save function.
Do you know what the size limit is for the spreadsheet?
400,000 cells. I wouldn't use it for anything like that you need performance on, because you notice here it's actually like a bit slow. Like if I, that's the wrong one. If I change this back to 100 and run that, and then we go here and say, yeah, takes a little bit to do it. But it's cool for just playing around with, and especially public data, then you just only need read access on it. It's quite a good solution actually, because then you put a caching layer on it, and then just like, I don't know, re-pull it every 10 seconds or whatever to make it faster. Is there any other questions about that?
Tim Mullock, ladies and gentlemen. I totally have to say we're using spreadsheets at the ABC as well. Just kind of like randomly taking feedback that you don't need to do anything critical with, or you don't sort of want to. Nothing mission critical, obviously, but it's a good way of getting people, especially if they don't have like technical access, giving people the data so that they can like put functions and calculations and stuff on it. It's a really interesting way of doing that. Yeah, I just can't get that. Never mind. So I just want to say thank you very much to all of our speakers today, as well as our sponsors. I was going to put them on the screen, but I can't multitask. Just another shout out. If you're looking at, or if you're interested or even vaguely curious about talking to BrisJS in the future, come up and have a chat with me after this. And yeah, I'd love to make that happen and get some new faces. So that's pretty much it. I think all the pizza's cleaned away, so thanks everyone for that. And we'll hopefully see you either at the social drinks, which we'll announce on Meetup, or at the next BrisJS. Thanks everyone for coming. Right.